Welcome, everyone, to this wonderful webinar, Games and Gaming Platforms, How to Manage the Black Hole and Keep Your Child Safer and Saner Online. We're going to look at this poll that we've just launched and had over 125 parents interact with, and we've got an overwhelming majority of parents that are concerned. 83% of parents saying we are concerned about our children's gaming habits. So it's a very good webinar, very good topic to be looking into today. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at, what we can do about this. And again, making sure that we're giving practical advice. So if you haven't yet met me, this is the sixth of six webinars that we've been running with Discovery. Some fantastic work that they are helping us do in the digital wellbeing space. And we together with my co-founder, Kate Farina, who's in the chat answering questions and posting links. So post questions in the chat at any point. Are family digital wellness activists. And that means that we are helping you, the parents of this current generation, get on board with what it means to be an online parent, a digital parent. It's not a job that your parents had and they didn't teach you how to do it. So we are here to help you and support you as you go on this digital parenting journey. So gaming. We're going to talk about why parents are concerned. We're going to talk about why psychologists are concerned. And we're going to actually hear from a former recovered gamer himself, giving his opinion on how parents can talk about this and a little bit about how his dad helped him through this journey. So it's going to be great. We're looking forward to it. And, we understand that it is a big conversation. That's why we brought in an additional expert. We normally have one. We got two today, to give both sides of the story so that we know how to approach this conversation with our children, because it is a complicated one. Of course, there is all of this information, recordings, links to more articles, to more videos. In fact, a link straight through to the Be in Touch Discovery Digital Wellbeing Home, which is kind of a more focused resource area. Than just the Discovery Health Mental Health Information Hub, which has just a wealth of resources. So here you can see we're clicking through to the Be in Touch Discovery Mental Health, Digital Wellbeing resource page. So lots of information that you can grab there. I'm sure Kate will put the link a few times into the chat where you can go and download these resources that we talk about in the webinars and make sure that you are empowered to keep your kids safer and saner online. I'm going to start a poll, and we're going to do two polls just in the lead up to some statistics, which we always start with, because at Be in Touch, we are gathering data on what the digital landscape of our children looks like. So a big part of gaming and the issues that come from that is gaming at the wrong times, gaming for the wrong amounts of time, gaming on the wrong platforms. So the poll I've put up is, what percentage of kids do you think have a device in their bedroom at night? And that'll relate to some of the concerns that we have about typical gaming habits. And then we will unpack what we can do about that while we hear from our experts. Okay, so we got about 50% of us thinking that it's over 75% of kids have a device in their bedroom, and just below 40% saying it's less than 75, but above 50. Okay, so that's an interesting perspective. And then finally, the last one that's actually the main point that we want to talk about is do kids have devices in their bedrooms? And let's learn a little bit more about how devices are used, and specifically gaming. And one of the areas of concern that we have is stranger contact. So you can see that 64% have a device or a phone in the bedroom. Obviously, mobile gaming is absolutely huge now as well, and so definitely of concern there. And then if you look, that 61% have been contacted by a stranger online, and then 14% of that is via gaming platforms. So it's not an insignificant amount of stranger contact that is happening via gaming. It's just one of the concerns that we have. Obviously, there's a lot of other ways in which we're concerned about the fact that kids are being contacted online via games, but it's also just the way in which these games and gaming habits impact their lives. So we have to embrace this online parenting. We have to understand that our children do not have the brain development, especially teens and preteens, don't have the kind of brain integrity in their brain tissue to actually have the capacity to control that impulse as much as we do. So we got to help them do that. And we're going to talk about how we can do that. We have to understand that gaming is a recognized addiction. It is a recognized disorder, recognized by the American Psychological Association, the WHO, and even what's called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is what psychologists use and psychiatrists use to diagnose whether something is actually a clinical issue. So it is something that is real. It only gets to that very intense level where it would be diagnosed in a small percentage of gamers, but it is significant because there's a spectrum of compulsive use, and that's what we're going to be looking at. So we have to embrace this idea of online parenting. Now listen, gaming can be positive. We are not saying that you need to get rid of games. And I think if you do, your children would actually revolt in a way that wouldn't be helpful. We have to understand that it can be relaxing. It can give us a break from stressful lives. And let's be honest, our kids' lives these days are probably more stressed than kids' lives have ever been, with the political landscape, the medical landscape, and all the rest. So there is a need. What we have to understand that gaming fills a need in children's lives. We just have to help them balance that out and make sure that they're filling some of those needs in different ways, because obviously it's just a very easy win to get off and game. There is the potential for collaboration and communication on gaming platforms. And in fact, some of the best problem-solving software out there are games, because children are learning self-mastery. Of course, the cons, hard to stop, massive time drain, stranger contact, which we've just mentioned. And then, of course, it can be very detrimental to the physical and mental development of our children. So guys, there's a lot in this conversation, but what we want you to come away with today is something practical that you can do to talk to your kids about what is going on. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to set up boundaries and how to start to influence your children. And we have to just be aware that there are dangers when it comes to online gaming. This is at the more extreme, end of the spectrum. Of course, there is financial, if people are spending too much money in games. I've spoken to not one, but a few parents about, their credit card being used for thousands and thousands of rands of online purchases that they didn't know that they had enabled. Again, this talks to the fact that we have to make sure that our children's devices are set up for children and not for adults. So we can't just hand over our device or a device that we used to use because the settings are not going to be optimal. Of course, financially, blackmail, all the stuff that can come with stranger contact. And then specifically on the extreme, it's that sexual contact, it's sharing of pornography, the potential to even meet up in person, and all the harms that come with that. In a moment, we're going to talk about the difference between content and contact when it comes to gaming. And that's also a very important distinction. We have to understand that it's not just this idea of stranger contact and, human trafficking, these very shocking ideas, but it's the content itself. It's the violence. It's the sex that they might see on these games, gambling. And we're going to get into that and how gambling has infiltrated a lot of children's gaming, adult themes, language. Of course, then there's the contact side of it. So it's the content in the game and it's the contact around the game, whether it's voice chat, using an app like Discord, which is what a lot of kids use for voice chat while they play. So it's actually a separate platform that the kids are getting onto, public platform, open servers. So definitely some concern there. And we do have more resources on that specifically that I'll chat about later. Obviously, whether they are moving the children from the game into a side channel, that's definitely of concern. So we can't just think about the time. We have to think about what is the content in the game and what is the contact that it's opening our child to. Now, we have to understand that it is not as simple as your child's self-control, the willpower of your child. We can very often look at our children. Why are you so weak? Why can't you just put this game down? And we can lose it and get emotional about it. We have to understand that these games have been designed with what is called persuasive technology to make them very hard to put down. Your child is not fighting a fair battle. They are fighting against 100,000 developers and programmers and data scientists who have figured out all the ways to make your child super drawn into that game. So it's not as easy as just telling them to do it and expecting them to do it. Of course, there's a lot of hacking, brain hacking, using what we call, what we would say gambling, but what the gaming industry calls surprise mechanics. A very nice euphemism for gaming. gambling. And what it means is that in the game, your child can pay real money for a chance to win a good item or open a door or whatever the case is. And let's be honest, call a spade, that's gambling. So, there's that ties them in. And obviously that has very negative implications for what it sets them up for in their life further on. And this is all based on these microtransactions that within a game, you don't just buy the game. Once you're in the game, you have to buy more things. And this is really an area of concern. So I say these things to help you build compassion so that you can start to really understand where your children are coming from. Now, in order to understand more about both sides of this conversation, before we go into how you set boundaries, which is the big takeaway from this webinar, we're going to talk to Lungile Lechesa, she and Cam Adair, who Lungile is the first person that is trained by the Intent to Digital clinical training for psychologists or mental health practitioners in diagnosing gaming disorder and also what you can do about it. And then Cam is actually the founder of a great website called Game Quitters and influenced the Intent to training. So we're going to hear from both sides, a psychologist who has their clinical perspective on this conversation, then a former gamer, reformed, who's going to give his perspective, and then we're going to take you through how you set those boundaries step by step. So let's hear from Lungile. We asked Lungile, is gaming addiction really the right word for, this conversation? Because, maybe it's a little bit too strong of a word. Let's hear what Lungile had to say about it.
Look, I think it's a strong word, but I do think that it accurately captures addiction. So if you think about addiction, it's something that you feel the need to do or to engage in. So I do think it crosses the line from you're playing just to have fun, when now suddenly all you can think about is gaming. You can't concentrate in meetings or at school. You don't want to interact with your family. There's conflict with family and friends. They're not seeing you. You are locked up in your room and all you're doing is gaming. So it occupies a lot of mental real estate. It's all you can think about. And I think, when it comes to how parents can spot whether it's gaming addiction or anything really in your children, once you start seeing a change in behavior and your child is no longer the child I think it's a red flag. You need to speak to your child and kind of, I don't want to use the word investigate, but investigate what's going on.
Yeah, so definitely, it is a serious issue. The American Psychiatric Association has 9 characteristics for gaming disorder, and a lot of them speak to what Lungile just mentioned, withdrawal, increased game tolerance, which means they keep playing more, an inability to reduce or stop, giving up other activities. This is a big one. It's the opportunity cost of the gaming. What's not happening, the walk that isn't happening, the conversation that isn't happening, the social skills that aren't being developed. And when it becomes this habitual escaping as opposed to dealing with the problems that we have to solve. Life is one problem after the next. You as parents would know that. So we have to keep that in mind, that it is something serious. And internet gaming disorder has been recognized as a global issue. In fact, China have given a stringent lockdown on the amount of time children can spend gaming. But I don't think it's as simple as just laying down the law without any conversation, because we have to get our children's buy-in. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about critical thinking, which is what we're trying to get our kids into. So how do we spot it? How do we know that it's happening? And a lot of these symptoms, parents might say, well, that's just every teenager ever. But specifically in the gaming, if there's very high anxiety when you start talking about balancing out that time spent, when they're compulsively thinking about it or talking about it all the time, especially secretive behavior. This is a big one where they are secreting away to go and play that game. That's also definitely of concern. So, let's keep going with the conversation with Lungile, and we're going to hear from her where she says, I asked her the question, what are the impacts of this addictive or compulsive gaming? And let's hear what she has to say on that.
So what I'm seeing is there's a lot of conflict with family, because if you think about yourself as an adult, nowadays your phone can tell you how much screen time you've spent, and it breaks down for you whether it was, I don't know, social media or whatever other, however it works. So if you're spending a lot of time online, whether it's gaming or on social media, you're spending less time with the people around you. So it will start with conflict where, your parents or your partner will call you for dinner. You don't want to leave the screen, and now it becomes this big thing. There's elements of, like I said at the beginning, isolation. So you now start socially withdrawing from your physical world friends. And I say physical world because with the online gaming, like you're saying, with Discord and all those platforms, you are engaging with other people. You're just not engaging with them physically. So there's isolation from there. Another impact, you find that some people will play to escape, much like how addiction starts. So you're not really dealing with whatever it is that is happening in the physical world. You're not really processing whatever it is that you're going through.
Yeah, guys. So, definitely an area of concern, and the conflict, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that we see in the family space. There's just so much conflict around it. I've just been watching the chat, and of course, some great suggestions coming through of playing games with your kids, and we'll talk about those solutions in just a moment. And of course, I had a private question coming through about children with ADHD, and of course, gaming is going to be really attractive to them because it gives them that focus, and they don't have to deal with all of the jumping around thoughts that characterizes ADHD. But there is that withdrawal. There is the addiction priming, where this compulsive use can lead to other things, where you're managing emotions with a substance, whether it's gaming, that's a digital substance, and later a physical substance, as it was in my case personally in my life. So definitely, of concern. So let's head in the direction of solutions. And we spoke to Lungile about, how should parents manage this, this excessive gaming by their children? How do they start to approach it, that conversation?
I think what you need to do as a parent in that situation is encourage more physical contact time, because there is so much value from spending time with other people. There's so much value in 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds playing together, because that's where you learn social skills. You learn that you can't hit the other child and get away with it because that's not okay. You learn boundaries, you learn how to set boundaries for yourself and how to respect other people's boundaries. And you learn how to be socially comfortable and to engage well. So again, I wouldn't say be punitive and kind of ban gaming in the household. You can allow it, but with limits. So there has to be, your child needs to understand that there has to be a balance. The same way you come home, you do your homework, and then you can play. It's no different.
Yeah. So guys, we heard it straight from Lungile there, that there has to be an appropriate time for this conversation. You have to avoid that judgment and coming in with a very hard line. We do then have to help them set those limits. What helps is to have a routine where it's set up so that gaming is a reward. It's not something that's done before responsibilities are handled. And as we mentioned in the start of the webinar, to that person that lives close to where I grew up in a very outdoor environment, is that unless our children have a contrast on what to compare this gaming fun to, it's going to be very difficult for them to understand why they should do something else. So encouraging them to have that physical activity, encouraging them to have relationships in real life, and helping them with the skills that they need to make that a fun experience will help to give them that comparison, so that we can start to create that structure for the balance. So the next question we asked Lungile, and this is where we almost getting into the how-to steps on setting these boundaries, was what does that actually look like? What are the practical steps that we can take as parents?
So the first thing you want to do as a parent is to not be judgmental. You don't want your child to feel like gaming is wrong, because that's not what we're saying. There's nothing wrong with gaming. The problem is when it becomes too much and it's starting to interfere with their everyday life. So I would say watch the language that you use when speaking to your child about this. so that they know you are just setting limits. Like with anything with children, your job as a parent is to protect them and to set limits. So this shouldn't be treated differently. So that would be the first thing. I think the next thing would be encourage outside play, encourage physical play. It goes back to setting limits. Have a routine for your child where you say after school, you do your homework and then you read for an hour and then you can have an hour of playtime. And by playtime, I mean online gaming time. And above and beyond, I cannot emphasize relationship, relationship, relationship.
So every family is different. I know parents that will come to me and say, just tell me how much time is okay. And it's not a question that we like to answer at Be in Touch because your family is unique. And so we like to talk about this idea of balancing this child's wheel. What does their wheel look like? You know, if that sleep aspect of their wheel is completely reduced and there's no exercising and no reading and lots of screen time, they're going to be bumping along in a really awkward kind of way. So we're wanting to help them understand that the time spent has to be divided amongst all the things that they have to do in their day. And this can be a wonderful process to take your child through to talk to them as well. You know, what do you think is important? How do we do this together? And so what I'd like to do now is bring in a good friend of mine, Cam. He's been an absolute mentor in this gaming space, and he's got, you know, he's spoken on all sorts of news platforms. He's very well spoken. He's got 2 TEDx talks about gaming, and he was a reformed gamer. You know, he was one of the extremes, 16 hours a day, lying to his parents about having a job because he was actually of that age that he was working, sneaking back in through the window to get back to the gaming console and pretending that he was at work. And so this is a little bit of a longer clip, and I couldn't edit it any shorter because what he brings is the voice of your child. He brings the voice of how serious gaming is for kids in terms of the needs that it's meeting for them. So I want to just listen to him, and then we're going to have at least 5-7 minutes to unpack practical steps on how do you set those boundaries. So let's hear from Cam, and then we'll take the conversation forward.
This topic can be quite conflicting, and there can be a lot of tension and stress around it. There are a couple really important things that parents need to do. First, parents need to make sure that they have support for themselves, so we're able to approach these conversations just in a much better headspace. The next is time and time again, when we're asking kids or teens what they wish their parents would do more, they always say they wish that my parents would listen. Now, this doesn't mean you need to listen to your kids say that gaming is not a problem for them in their life, but listen to what they're sharing about gaming as an experience for them. So it might be that gaming is a social activity and they're worried that if they're not gaming, what that's going to do to their social life. How are they going to interact with their friends? Maybe gaming is an outlet to deal with stress and to cope with the natural difficulties that life presents. Kids are under a lot of pressure. And so being able to really meet them to hear about how gaming is in their life will give you insights into maybe different areas you need to address to help them be able to find more balance. The next is to really come with a lot of presence. Finding the space to be able to have this conversation where both parties can be present is really important. What my father used to do was he would take me to Peter's Drive-In, which is a famous milkshake shop in my hometown. And what was beautiful about this was that for 20 minutes we were in the car. So we got to talk about maybe a subject that was a bit more charged. And then we were at the restaurant and we got to have our milkshake and just kind of spend time together. And then for 20 minutes on the drive home, we got to talk about solutions. We've talked about this now. How are we going to move forward and collaborate on a solution together? This created an environment that was much easier for me to be able to have these conversations. Whereas if I was playing a game and he's trying to talk to me, I'm not present enough to even be able to really interact anyways. And basically, I would tell him whatever he needed to hear for us to stop talking so I could get back to my game. So maybe go for a walk, go spend some time in nature, go on a hike, or maybe it's go to your favorite ice cream spot in town. But get out of the house into a place that's a bit safer to have this conversation. And I guess finally, I would say to make sure that you have empathy. These topics around gaming can be quite complex for individuals, and it can be quite scary to have less time to be able to cope with that activity. So be empathetic to the fact that that can be quite confronting for the teen or the adolescent or the child, and prepare beforehand on ways that you can collaborate together to be able to find solutions. Gaming doesn't have to be this evil thing. It can be in balance, and we really need to be able to support each other to be able to do that.
I really like Cam's calm and collected approach to this. And so we're going to spend the rest of the time together really just looking at what practically you as parents can do in the next moments. I also just want to pick up on that great suggestion in the chat. I believe it was from Craig and Taflin, just talking about openly discussing gaming, maybe even gaming together. I love this idea from one of our expert friends, Chris McKenna, over at Protect Young Eyes, that when children's thumbs are moving, their mouth is moving. So you can be gaming with your child. You can start to get involved in their gaming life so that you can break down those walls and have better conversations about it. So these are the steps that Cam recommended coming into this, that you got to listen to why it's so important to them. They've got to get that sense of being heard. Get curious about what gaming is, especially if you've got no idea. And this is really, really important. Choose the right time and place to have the conversation. While you are shouting at them to get down to dinner, that's not the time to look at how gaming is impacting their lives. And a great one here is ask for solutions from your child. When you're in that walk down in the park or at that milkshake place, if that's what you do in your family, you'd be surprised that kids often reflect on their behavior and want to not do things that make them feel bad or make them feel out of control. So definitely a good 4-step process to look at in terms of approaching it. Now, when we set these boundaries, there are various ways in which you can set this up. And we've got a lot more detail on this broadly in our Family Digital Alliance, which is linked at the Discovery Mental Health Hub. But you can do it in terms of age-appropriate games. And again, Common Sense Media is where we would go to find out more about the games that your child is playing. You can't rely on the game developers themselves. They're going to put it at 13, but there's going to be adult themes in there. So commonsensemedia.org, and I'm sure Kate will put that in the chat, will give you a review, what parents say and what children say about this game. Then it can be time limits. We also have to understand that some of these games are played live if your child is old enough and responsible enough to be playing online with other humans, other people. So it's very hard to just set a 30-minute. So you might want to look at a round or a game, whatever that might mean in the different game that you're using. Definitely having clarity around stranger engagement rules. So, what do we do if a stranger sends you a message? How do we respond to that? Making sure that they are clear on what is allowed and not allowed. And this is a big one, consequences and autonomy. So as a parent, your job is to enforce these rules that are set up. If there's no follow-up, there's no learning. And children are looking for autonomy. They're looking, especially teens, are looking for that ability to be young adults and take control of the circumstance of their life. So if you can help them set up those systems where when they know that if they follow all these agreements, they get more freedom, and if they don't follow them, they get less freedom, that's going to help them along in terms of their buy-in to helping the family get less conflict in the conversation. The other aspect of this is helping your child choose a game. Not all games are created equal. One of the guys that we follow in thought leadership set up Elon Musk's school, and he's since launched another thing called synthesis.io, and it is a fully game-based learning platform. Really great platform. But of course, we got to look at what skill is being mastered in this game. If they're just clicking on mining a piece of rock and getting that rock and converting it into gemstones, they're not learning anything. But if they're having to think through problem solving, if they're having to strategize, these are good things. Myself, I'm a chess player, so I love games, and we have to not just broad brushstroke them as all bad. There can be good in them. So get involved. Make sure that it's age appropriate. Make sure that your family values are clear. Does this game violate our family values? And help your child identify the skill that's being mastered. Our tech tips, we talk about them each week. And definitely what we want to know from you guys is what will be your first step in terms of doing something about your children's gaming. So we've put a poll up just to get a little sense of what 181 parents on the 9th of February are going to be doing about gaming in their homes. These are just first steps. We have 8 steps to digital family well-being that you can go through step by step, but we're just wondering about what you want to do at the outset, just straight off the bat of this webinar. What's going to happen in the next week in your life? And a lot of us saying that agreeing on those family tech rules is going to be high on the priority list, checking in and checking up. Absolutely. Those are really 2 great places to start. And I would say as well, getting that device out of bedrooms and understanding that children don't have the capacity to manage their emotions late at night and make good decisions. Okay, guys, we want you to know that we're here to support you. The Discovery Health Mental Health Hub is a wealth of resources. And at the bottom of that page, you can click through to the digital wellbeing specific resource page that we have set up for you. Definitely be sure to sign up to our newsletter if you would like to keep this conversation going forward. It has been a wonderful time to be with you all over 6 webinars. I can't believe it's come to an end this fast, but we have covered so many aspects of what it means to be a digital parent, but the journey goes on. For those of you that are interested, we will be running a series in the next couple of weeks on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Discord, and Snapchat. So be sure to follow us on social media to find out more about that. And I just want to say a massive thank you to 2 very special, I guess you would say, groups or entities. The one is, of course, you parents. If it wasn't for you showing up, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing and have the ripple impact that we have. And of course, to Discovery. It's so wonderful to be partnered with a forward-thinking brand that is looking to make a difference where it's really felt. And I know that it wasn't an easy one to take on this big conversation, and they have done that, which is absolutely fantastic. So guys, thank you so much for being with us. I've run slightly over time, but I did start 2 minutes late, so hopefully you'll forgive me the 30 seconds over. Thank you so much for being with us, and we are at the end of our 6-part family digital well-being series. So it's been wonderful to have you with us. We look forward to partnering with you long term, so please reach out if you need help. And thank you so much to Discovery for giving us this opportunity to share this important information with parents that care. Thank you so much. Bye.